to this special conversation, part of Mama India, the Digital Bharat 2.0. I'm Miloni Bhatt. India is a mobile-first market and set to be among the brightest spots on the horizon of the global app economy. Internet penetration is improving and app downloads are surging. It is estimated that the consumer internet market opportunity in India will be $1.6 trillion by 2025. And this, of course, presents unlimited opportunities for the digital industry. So, how can a Indian app ecosystem leverage the positives that India has to offer and contribute to the growth of the economy? I have with me Saibal Biswas. He is the head of marketing, partnerships, and PR at MediBuddy. And I have with me Ishaan Bose, CMO of KreditBee, to give us their thoughts on leveraging Digital India and fueling a decade of opportunities. Saibal, thanks very much for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Ishaan, we're really glad to have you here today.
Thank you, Miloni. Looking forward to the discussion.
All right. First one's for both of you. Saibal, if you could start. We've seen this rapid adoption of digitalization across the nation. Deloitte study points out that by 2026, there'll be 1 billion smartphone users in India. So, if you could give us your thoughts on this and how it has impacted the growth of the Indian app ecosystem and disrupted sectors, especially yours, for instance, healthcare. And then, Ishaan, if you could input on the financial services.
Sure. I think there are 4 different inflection points which has come one after another. One is, of course, the internet penetration. The second was the smartphone penetration, and both came almost together. The third thing, which was a government imposed, which was demonetization, which led to a lot of transactions moving to the digital ecosystem. That helped. And then, while I would not say that was a great thing to happen, but of course, COVID was the 4th inflection point, especially from the industry or the company which operates in a healthcare industry. So some of the things which we had expected to be slightly slower all got accelerated during COVID, and people, because there was no option to avail a lot of healthcare services which you could still avail in a digital ecosystem, like doctor consultations or medicine delivery. I think we saw a lot of movement where people just moved online, first in an audio only format, then in a video also format. And I think that added to a lot of tailwind and growth which we experienced in the last 2 years of COVID. Having said that, post-COVID, we see some of the fundamental habit changes continuing to be. Why I mentioned the 2 other things of smartphone, internet penetration, and people's being sort of habituated to use digital transaction is healthcare services in the way in which we provide is very similar to how e-commerce happens. You pay for the service, and then the service delivery happens either through for doctor consultation, through a video consultation or audio, or for that matter, you order a medicine and the delivery happens to your home, or you sort of order a diagnostic service where someone goes to your home, collects the samples, and the report is mailed to you, or your appointment is booked for radiology or other services. And now even a service for an end-to-end surgery care, including the insurance coverage, all is taken care of on the click of a few buttons on the smart app. I think that's been tremendous by any stretch of imagination, and we continue to be buoyant in terms of healthcare being a need-based service. I think when people are not well, they sort of continue to use the services now in a more online before offline kind of a mode.
Right. I think to add to what Saibal said, I think I liked how he divided the entire last decade into 4 different milestones. So specifically talking about the financial services ecosystem, which we as KreditBee are pioneering today, especially in the digital lending segment. So if you look at even 7 to 8 years back, right, financial services, you think offline, right? You think about banks, you think about NBFCs, where to avail something as simple as a loan, right? You have to go to a offline branch, you have to do a lot of paperwork, provide a lot of documents, and then wait for almost a week to 10 days, depending on what kind of loan you want to avail, to even understand whether your loan has been sanctioned or whether you have been approved for the loan or not, right? So just to get an approval, it would take 7 to 10 days. And in an ecosystem like India, where a lot of things are on people, right? We are not an economy where, unlike your Scandinavian nations, where a lot of things are taken care by the government. Here, many things are on people, right? Many basic things like healthcare, education, and whatnot. Now, in emergency situations and cash crunch situations, if you have to wait as long for something as basic as getting the money, right? So it becomes very difficult for the lowest common denominator, the common man, to go through the days when things are not as per the plan, right? So that is one thing which has largely been disrupted by the digital Bharat, like you said, Miloni, as to with the advent of deeper smartphone penetration, more internet, more digitization of solutions, and then of course fast pacing of all the things put together. I think that's one thing which really has come to the fore. What has also happened with digitization is that entities on the supply side, right, which we all are a part of, we are able to leverage data better, and we are able to provide solutions in a more customized way. To take a very simple example, in the lending ecosystem. So earlier, people who did not have a credit score, or people who had never taken a loan, um, they had next to zero possibility of getting a loan, a personal loan, or any kind of a unsecuritized or unsecured loan from a bank or an NBFC, because they don't have a credit score, as simple as that. Or let's say people who don't have a specific salary income, right? People who, let's say, belong to the self-employed segment, people who are freelancers, which by the way is almost 40 to 50% of the semi-urban urban India's workforce. Now those people did not have any means to avail loans or finance, for that matter. Now, because of this digitization, what has happened is that supply side entities like us have the leverage of identifying data points beyond the basic ones for lending. So there are so many alternative data points that we have access to, basis which we can provide these services to people, even over and above the usual data points that the traditional banks and NBFCs look for. So largely, I think it has definitely enhanced reach. It has definitely made services more accessible on the demand side, and on the supply side, I believe it has also ensured that we are able to serve a lot more people than what we could earlier, not with respect to geography itself, but also with respect to the demographics, the interest, and the behavioral patterns, which I believe is a huge win in the last decade, and all of that could be attributed to the digital Bharat, like you said.
In healthcare, we believe what happened because of government intervention of creating UPI, we are also in the cusp of a similar thing, which is UHI, which is the Ayushman Bharat uh, uh, ABDN, what we call, where government is trying to create the middle layer of UHI, where on the top we can have people like us or other healthcare service providers, so that the end customer has access to a or he has his own data which is consistent, and he doesn't have to carry his data when he goes from one hospital to another. It is
Right.
one consumer, one data, and one source of truth which he has.
Right. So really, this has, improved opportunity, as you both have pointed out, and of course, digital adoption is only accelerating, across the remote areas, across tier two, tier three. But, as digital India kind of transforms into digital Bharat, what are the new kind of opportunities that you're seeing for the app ecosystem? So, Shoibal, if you want to begin, and then maybe Sam can take it after you spoke.
I think the opportunities are huge. I think one, uh, let's look at how we are able to solve some of the consumer problems which are there. I think the first and the most important problem for a Bharat, digital Bharat, or the rural or the semi-urban sectors are problem of accessibility. They just don't have today access to quality healthcare. A digital healthcare ecosystem today gives them that access. Then there is a question of convenience. So why I would say convenience is it's not always possible to even get the appointment of the right doctor or the right health care services. So online gives you the convenience of booking a doctor anytime, anywhere at for you. And then the question of affordability. I think in online you can also, because you have a lot to choose from, you can also choose basis your requirement, specialty, and what you can today pay. So all the three levers, access, convenience, and affordability, are something which I think will fuel the growth and help us serve our consumers better for the rural part.
Right. Ishan, what are your thoughts? I mean, he's spoken about access, affordability. How does this work in your ecosystem? And what are the opportunities that you're seeing, that can sort of come out of it?
So see, when we talk about Bharat, right, we have to first understand what does Bharat stand for, right? So if you think of any other country, or if you think of any other geographical landscape, like for instance, talking about the continental Europe, talking about the US, talking about China, one thing that you realize is that within that geographical setup, there is a lot more homogeneity compared to what we see in India, right? When I say homogeneity in other ecosystems, it's with respect to the languages that they speak, it's with respect to the ethnicities, largely the way they look, the overall economic situation, right? The gap between the so-called tier one and tier four of the pyramid, right? So there is a lot more diversity in Bharat, which is what makes Bharat very unique, right? I mean, in the words of Mr. Ramachandra Guha, it is one of the biggest socio-political experiments in the globe, to have a country with so much diversity across the spectrum, right? So now when diverse is put to the fore for any entity which is trying to serve its consumers, right? First of all, it is very important to be able to serve the consumers in a customized, or I would say a personalized way, right? You cannot have a one size fits all solution that you can just deploy as is, and you expect whatever base of the 1.3 billion population you're trying to target to adopt it as it is, right? So you have to have the means of providing these solutions in a way that serves the respective individual or the respective cohort you are trying to get to, right? And that's where digital plays a huge role, right? Because it gives you an option, it gives you an opportunity to customize your solutions, whether it's in terms of the product journey, whether it's in terms of the kind of solutions you want to offer, the kind of offers and offerings you want to provide as a part of your positioning, even slightly more trivial aspects like the language that you want to kind of reach out to them via, let's say, even the advertisements that you reach out to them, the listing, the product journey, the language via which you even serve them, right, via the service channels. And the overall journey that you want to define, right? And geographical part is just one part. I'm talking about even the income group, the different kinds of demographics that people belong to. So what I believe is the biggest win for digital when it comes to serving Bharat is the option and opportunity that it gives us to personalize the solutions to the respective consumers, so that they feel that a solution is tailor made for them, right? And that's what increases the adoption, that's what increases the relevant reach that we talk about when we talk about serving the consumers. For me, I think that's the biggest win. That's the biggest
Ishan, can you elaborate on any particular marketing strategies that are working for you to market to this new Bharat? What are you guys adopting?
So one thing that I mean, I wouldn't say that it is just limited to serving Bharat, but definitely a huge proponent when it comes to serving Bharat is, I mean, I'll just extend the point which I mentioned, which is personalization, right? Now,
Right.
how do you take it to the next level, right? So it's a term that is fairly I would say misused in the larger scheme of things. We talk about personalization, but just putting the name of the consumer in an SMS is not personalization. It's a lot more than that. So I'll take an example. So we are into lending, right? So we identify different consumer cohorts in the back end, And because of the advent of digitally acquiring consumers, we get a lot of data about the users with their due permission. We follow those compliant norms, and we use those data points, or rather, what we derive from those data points are certain other derivatives of data that, let's say, we have from the consumers, create a lot of variables around it, and do a lot of propensity modeling. Now, when we talk about propensity modeling, it can happen at multiple layers. It can be propensity to take a loan in the first place. So let's say if there are 10 users who come to my app today, how likely is a user A to apply for a loan versus user B basis the data points that we get about the user, right? So how do you predict that? So that's a huge game changer, because the more you get it right, A, the more relevant your communication is to them. B, you save a lot of cost, right? Because you're not using $1 per user, right? If you've got $10 and 10 users, so you know where your $8 are going to go for those specific consumers who are likely to convert more versus the ones who are not as likely, right? So that is the first stage of propensity modeling. Second, of course, which is what our digital lending ecosystem is based on, which is to create a rule engine where we identify different set of rules for different set of consumers, and we see that how the users who apply for a loan on our platform pass those rules, and basis that not just the flag of whether we want to lend to them or not gets triggered, but also to what extent, for how many products we want to lend them for, right? And then certain other things, right, that which are the other offerings that we want to extend to them, and so on and so forth. So what all of it does, this entire propensity of taking a loan, or how likely a user is to take a loan, and how likely we are to extend a loan to the user and to what extent, what it does is it makes the entire consumer journey very, very relevant, and at the same time very seamless for our consumers, right? So if we know that a user is someone who we cannot serve today, so we would rather let them know in the minimal number of clicks than let them do the entire journey like it used to happen earlier in the case of banks, and then make them wait for 7 to 10 days, and then let them know that they're not going to get a loan from us, right? So the decisioning is quicker, the journey is more relevant, and the final offering that we give to the consumers is a lot more contextual to what their requirements are, and we just keep making it all the more intelligent. So I think that's the biggest relevant example I can think of at the moment when it comes to digital lending.
Right. It's all very interesting and very fascinating. Shoaibul, if you could input,
Yeah.
when it comes to reaching these users in Bharat, the next 200, 300 million, what are the similarities or differences in marketing strategies and, say for the, cohort which comes out of tier one versus someone that comes out of tier two and beyond?
I think for us also, it's been an interesting journey of discovering. I think we firmly believe in keeping the consumer in the center. So when we sort of looked at the data, and we do generate a lot of data because we are a marketplace in healthcare, we saw that most of the consumers from the rural or Bharat sort of likes to interact with a doctor in their own mother tongue or regional languages, because they are able to express themselves better. And that's where we sort of started building a product which is able to cater to a regional language option, where you can take a doctor consulting in the language of your choice. Uh, so in terms of the marketing part of it, given that this is a sort of audience which behaves in a different way than a metro tier one audience, I think we have been trying to follow the audience, be present on the relevant digital footprint which today he or she has. And from the back end of the product, we have also tried to build that capability to communicate with him in a language of his or her choice. Uh, and I think that has allowed us to serve him better. The second interesting thing, which may not be related to only Bharat, is now, because we are able to generate a lot of data, we are also able to normalize very interesting things and create benchmarks, which means that just to give more added value to our consumer, if we figure out during the course of his interaction, like in the case of, say, he does a diagnostic through one of our service providers, and the smart report is generated. So if his health parameters today are highlighting a potential risk, we choose to highlight that for her or him, and make him take the decision that this is a health risk which he or she has, so that in the long term we can add more value by preventing that risk, uh, and drive a consumer action to take a action now. I think these are two different examples, but both of it sort of either follows what consumer today is asking, or he's not asking, but we basis the data we are able to generate in a digital thing, and our ability to drive insights from the data, we are able
Yeah.
to drive consumer forward actions and
All
add
right.
value to them.
Again, very interesting. Shorbal and Ishan, my next question, obviously, all of you are using, both of you are using, AI and emerging technologies. Uh, from a ecosystem perspective, if y'all could tell me, maybe Shorbal, you can begin and then Ishan can follow, is what are the critical technologies you feel that businesses or brands need to invest in so that they're able to manage the marketing of their products and services in the most effective way possible.
I think because we are in the business of eventually data capture and then managing the data to help our consumers or serve our consumers better, I think one of the fundamental focus of us has been in trying to build and invest in a strong product and an engineering team, as well as the baseline data systems, which are not only robust but are also very secure. See, we are dealing with health data, whether there is a regulation which is strict or not doesn't matter, but we need to hold ourselves to high standards. So both the robustness of our systems and services in terms of our ability to cater to a demand, and if we today say that we have availability 24 by 7 anytime anywhere for a very serious need like healthcare where you cannot go wrong, we have to build our systems which are able to cater to that. On the other side, we also need to ensure that we are having access to a lot of consumer data, which needs to be held very securely. And this is where it's very important that we invest a lot of engineering efforts to also do the relevant audits, certifications, compliance checks, where we so that we can reduce any risk of this data breach. Uh, so I think these are the two things which we consistently would want to invest in. Apart from that, I think we do invest a lot in driving insights from the data, which is having an analytics team and a big data team embedded in most of the functions, including dedicated one for marketing analytics and all.
All right, Shoaib, you already answered the question that I had for you coming after that. That is, how do you manage issues around user privacy, data protection? Because, it is a big concern for all of us. Ishan, if we could have, your views on it, that, when it comes to technologies, from your perspective, which are the forward-looking technologies that companies or brands in your ecosystem need to leverage and adopt? And also, if you could tie in the user protection and the data security and privacy issue that Shoaib has spoken of.
So one key proponent of using AI to the most is to ensure that your data that you have, whether it's about the consumer or let's just stick to that, is as consolidated and as unified in your overall repository, right? I just take an example from our digital lending ecosystem itself. So of course, when you talk about digital lending, it's nothing but AI, right? Where a user applies for a loan and there is no human intervention. The system decides that what and how much needs to be led, right? So that in itself is AI. Now, how do you make it more powerful? How do you make it, more relevant? So the idea is how much of the user data you're able to consolidate in a singular repository. Now, when a user downloads the app, right, at the moment of downloading the app itself via the MMPs, you're able to get a certain amount of certain amount of data about the user even before the user has entered his or her first PII, which is either an email ID or the contact number OTP validation for the sign up. So even before the registration or the sign up, we have a certain amount of data about the user against the install ID, or let's say the transaction user ID that the user has. Now, once the user downloads and registers on the app and starts providing certain data fields about themselves, there are data points that they provide, and there are data points that you can derive from what they provide, right? Like for instance, if they give their PAN, now via their PAN, we can do a simple soft pull or a bureau soft pull or a hard pull and get certain other details about the user's borrowing behavior, right? Then the third data is how the user is behaving on the app, or what is the user activity on the app, how many times the user launches the app, with how many different pages the user is going into the app, what is the time at which the user comes to the app, what kind of uh, clicks the user is doing on the app, to what extent, right? So that is the third data point, which is the user's behavior on the app, right? The fourth data point is how do you interact with the user and how does the user interact back with you? So for instance, how much CRM communication you are pushing to the respective user, right? Via which channels? How many such communication is the user actually responding to? So let's say there are 10 users who come to the app. Now, user one responds to an SMS that is sent to them. The user two responds to an email that is sent to them. The user three does not respond to any CRM communication, right? So how does the CRM to and fro happen, right? Telecalling again is one of the things, of disposition you have. So sorry. So now the idea is how do you bring all this data together into a singular repository and then make it actionable when it comes to your overall data intelligence or artificial intelligence that you're doing. So of course you can, the idea is to automate your campaigns, the idea is to automate your propositions and all that, but the bigger point is how do you do it effectively? And if you ask me, I think the bigger problem statement which I believe most of the entities miss out on is how do we consolidate the data about the consumers in a singular space and then use all of it, whether it's static, dynamic, direct, derived data. So how do you use all of it together to strengthen your systems and your overall intelligence? I think that for me is the bigger problem statement for all of us. For the forward-looking technologies beyond AI, I am a reasonably good fan of blockchain. I'll just take an example relevant from a performance marketing standpoint. That today, let's say we are running ads on Google, Facebook, and let's say ad networks, with certain other partnership channels. Now, all these different channels work in silos, right? So there's a possibility that a user A is being targeted by me via Facebook, via Google, via certain other ad networks. And I'm paying, let's say, on impression or on clicks or whatnot, which is a top of the funnel cost model. Now, how do I optimize that cost? What if there is a singular user ID, which is something I can target them upon via different channels, and I know that this user is being targeted. So in that case, what I can do is I can choose my targeting for that user. So instead of targeting the same user via 10 different acquisition channels, I can choose, it's my choice, so I can choose to target that user only via a singular channel where I feel I have the highest possibility of converting that user, right? So what technologies like blockchain do is that, like you talked about, security, centralization, so all those things come together when you have a unique user identity that transgresses different platforms, and you're able to use that to optimize your cost, and like I said previously, optimize your conversions as well, which is something that goes hand in hand. So I think that's one of the key technologies which I feel should help the marketing digital ecosystem as we look forward.
All right. Very interesting insight there. These are now my last set of questions to both you, Ishaan, and to Shoaib. Ishaan, if you could speak to us about this. We want to be this $5 trillion economy. A lot of the enablers of this economy are expected to be digital. Uh, what is the role of tech startups and the app ecosystem that you would see in impacting India's overall growth, as well as creating, an economy, a digital economy, which is more inclusive? Right now, it's not as inclusive as we'd like it to be. So, what are your thoughts?
See, it's not something just the app ecosystem or the tech apps can do by themselves. I mean, any ecosystem can only be built on top of, all the key stakeholders that are a part of it. So, of course, starting with the government to the regulators to even the digital platform, the digital platform owners like Google being the largest one, because most of the app ecosystem today is built on Google Play. So all these stakeholders have to come together and think together for what is the best for the ecosystem when we are talking about that sort of a digital economy. So I think it's not something that the app owners or the tech entrepreneurs can do in isolation. One thing which I believe, like when you create a system, you need to have the makers and checkers. You need to have a policing system. So there is a lot of fraud that happens today when it comes to, and I'm not just talking about ad fraud. I'm talking about fraud at all levels. So when you create such a huge system, one of the important things is to ensure that how do you prevent it from the malfunctions and malpractices. Being in the industry for some time, what I realize is that there is a very lax attitude towards the kind of digital fraud that happens. I mean, I've spoken of it earlier as well, that if there is any kind of ad fraud that happens, the best or the worst that you can do is to just block them from your inventory, and you don't know when they're going to come back in a new form altogether. Now, the kind of spends that you're doing on digital, right, and the kind of fraud percentages that we have, right, it's in trillions, right? If you accumulate it over a period of year in the global economy. Now, with that amount of money going waste, right, it takes away any investor, any promoter, any marketer's confidence to go beyond a point. So it's very important to have a very strong policing system, a very strong regulatory framework to ensure that we create that sort of economy which thrives and sustains by itself. So while we all have the ingredients in place, it's extremely important for us to have that maker checker ecosystem to ensure that when we create, or while we are on our way to create that ecosystem, we are protected from the malpractices, because things that go wrong can really take the confidence away, and it's a case of few bad apples that can ruin the entire lot. So I would rather be a little cynical and think of that side and then try to prevent it than of course the other part is in place, is what I would say, and we just have to act upon it.
Right. So stronger regulation, stronger policy measures required to better manage. Police may be a very strong word, but basically better regulate the entire system at play. Shoaib, your views?
I think I would like to sort of agree to what Ishaan said in terms of having that maker checker system in place, and to ensure and that ad fraud and other frauds are quite significant. It sort of leads to a lot of wastage in a precious resource which could have been invested in either sort of providing a better quality service or trying to reach and make more people aware of the advantages which are available. Now, having said that, I think one more thing which I would like to add is it's a time of opportunity. I think even from the government perspective, I would say that in terms of healthcare, we see a lot of futuristic looking actions. Like I did touch about UHI or the Ayushman Bharat digital mission for the government, where government is trying to build the protocols for a middle layer like they did for UPI. I think these are very interesting times. There's a lot of opportunity which exists. There's a huge uh, space where a lot of players can today come in the healthcare and ensure that together we can work together to build that vision of enabling quality healthcare to a billion Indians. I think that's the vision which all of us try to in some way work towards, and I would rather also welcome more people to come in and help enable that vision, apart from the encouraging support which we see from the government.
Okay, these were good last words from Shoaib. Ishaan, any thoughts, before we end this?
No, I mean, overall, I'm pretty optimistic about the way, the digital ecosystem has grown over the last half decade, if not more than that. Lot of tech entrepreneurs have come on board. The kind of things that we could not even imagine doing digitally 5 years back are, now the entire. I mean, most of the people we know are very comfortable doing that. It's not just a matter of technology; it's also a matter of trust, right? And people are able to trust things digitally, which is a great move in the right direction. So overall, I'm very optimistic. I think the need of the hour now is that the other actors in the ecosystem, which is beyond the consumer and the the supplier or the app side,
Builders.
which all the other ecosystem players, they also come together and create stronger measures, stronger possibilities, easier ways of identifying and propagating things, right? So I think all of that coming together should definitely help this ecosystem grow, and the rest is to follow.
All right. Okay, Ishaan. Ishaan, Bose, and Shoaibal, thank you so very much, for your thoughts and for giving us your inputs on how we can fuel a decade of opportunities, especially when it comes to Digital Bharat 2.0. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Saloni. Thanks, Ishaan, for the wonderful discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Shoaib. Thanks, Miloni. Lovely having a conversation like this. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.